But Donald Trump is a divisive figure, barely needs saying. We all know that. One of the areas in which he's most divisive in some respects is in the question of his intelligence. To his opponents, he seems irrational, erratic. He seems not to learn from his mistakes, have no sense of his impact in the world and people at large. And to sum it up, he appears stupid. And not just a bit stupid, but profoundly stupid. His supporters say, no, you've got him wrong. He's playing three-dimensional chess. He's so much smarter than you that you can't see what he's doing, but actually he's got a plan, an agenda. And you know what? They're right. I believe they're right. He has a plan. He has an agenda. He's not stupid. He isn't irrational. He's not intellectual. He's not academically bright. But he's not as dumb as he appears to his critics. You see, I don't really need to rehearse all the ways that he looks stupid, but a really good example of this, I mean, two of the things that people are harping on about at the moment an awful lot. One of them is the speech by Pete Hegseth, and that's seen as an utter failure for Donald Trump. A strange thing, they held this meeting, a very exceptional meeting, calling generals and admirals and other general officers from all over the world, leaving the United States military very vulnerable, potentially without leadership able to respond in a timely manner, vulnerable to some sort of an attack. And then Pete Hegseth gets up and gives a speech that alienates a substantial proportion of the general officers, that's led to loads of resignations, and that is seen by Trump's critics as a complete and utter failure. And that's the first one that I'm going to talk about. The second one is Trump's behaviour, his apparently erratic behaviour, where he announces some sort of trade war, some sorts of tariffs, only to rescind it a week or two later without apparently having achieved anything at all. And to do this not just once, but to do this over and over again. It appears the height of stupidity to his critics. But what I want to suggest is that behaviour is only stupid if you assume that what Donald Trump is trying to do is operate as a normal president, right? The leader of the free world, a man charged with, protecting the security on every level, military and economic security of the United States. It makes no sense if you believe that he's trying to make America great again. This all just seems completely inexplicable, bizarre behaviour, and exceptionally stupid, because he doesn't seem to learn from any of his apparent failures. But there is one agenda that if Trump was following, if this was if this one agenda was his real motivation, the principle behind his behaviour, then all of his behaviour would fall into place, and it would be seen that it's not actually irrational, erratic, wild. It makes perfect sense if you think that Donald Trump's got one very simple agenda, and that agenda is the personal enrichment and advancement of Donald Trump. Now, lots of his behaviour makes sense if you understand that as being Donald Trump's only real concern. Now, let's take this crashing of the markets. I think I was actually I was one of the very early ones. I don't know if I was the first. I was certainly the first one I was aware of to offer this analysis. I offered this on Facebook, on my a group I run, looking at Brexit and politics. But other people have suggested the same thing. Maybe some did so before me. I don't read everything in that by any means. But let's look at Trump's behaviour. So in his first term, he tore up the established rule book for presidents. He refused to hand over his tax returns. He refused to give up his businesses. And there is some evidence that he tore up the emoluments clause and started taking gifts, or at least attempted to take various gifts, for himself. And in other ways, he profited from the presidency. For example, it was very well known that not only did he charge the Secret Service, insist that the Secret Service used rooms in his hotels and then charged them exorbitant rates for it, but we also have substantial evidence that foreign powers would rent rooms at his hotels or suites in his properties at very elevated prices in the hope of gaining favour with the president. So this was a radical shift. And it was, I think, an interesting experiment from Trump's point of view, because he discovered that he could do this and get away with it scot-free, that nobody would say boo to him. So on this second term, he behaved rather differently. I don't think the motivation was different, but he behaved somewhat differently. One of the first things he did was to pressure the resignation of the chairman of the Security and Exchanges Commission. He replaced him with a temporary appointment, a guy called, let me get this right, Mark Ueda. Now, one of the first things that Mark Ueda did, having taken over as the temporary chairman, was to rescind what was called delegated authority. In the Securities and Exchanges Commission, the director of the Division of Enforcement had the power to initiate investigations, issue subpoenas, and generally investigate the occurrence or appearance of insider trading and other illicit dealings. By rescinding this, what Ueda did was demand that before any investigation could take place, they had the commission itself had to be approached, and permission had to be granted, basically by him, right? A Trump appointee who was appointed because of his personal loyalty to Trump. Now, Ueda's gone, replaced by Michael Selig, and by Paul Atkins, and a Trump appointee, somebody who believes very strongly in deregulation and has shown definite signs of having a common agenda with Donald Trump, shall we say. And the same for the CTF, the commission that deals with futures and other trading. That's now Michael Selig, somebody who's very into the very dodgy world of crypto, and again shows every sign of being very sympathetic to Trump and his agenda, in this case his excursions into the world of crypto and those rather bizarre, essentially trading cards, virtual trading cards that Trump is so fond of. So, Trump appointees who have demonstrated loyalty to Trump, sympathy to his agenda, and who are ultimately very in favour of free operations of markets and businesses and keeping government's nose out of their dealings, are now in charge of any potential investigation into Donald Trump and his financial dealings. So we don't really know what's going on, right? I mean, insider trading of the worst kind could be going on, and nobody would be actually investigating it. So we can't say that we know that that's going on. But now let's look at some of Donald Trump's behaviour. The way that he has repeatedly started trade wars, imposed apparently irrational, large tariffs on countries, then having obtained apparently absolutely nothing, has a short while later U-turned and either delayed the imposition of tariffs or withdrawn them. Right? The consequence every time has been quite predictable. Every time he's started one of these trade wars or levied one of these tariffs, markets have collapsed. Every time that he's then said, changed my mind, I'm going to hold off for a bit, or I'm not going to do it at all, up go the markets. Now, viewed from a standard point of view, this behaviour really makes no sense at all. And to keep doing it, surely Trump must be incredibly stupid to keep doing it. You can imagine trying it once or twice, but when he discovers it's alienating America's allies and all sorts of people and gaining them very little, you'd think he'd stop. Surely he must be an absolute imbecile to keep going and ignore all the advice. Well, his behaviour would make perfect sense if A, his goal were simply to enrich Donald Trump, no matter what the cost to anybody else, and secondly, if he understood what his statements would do to markets. Because if he understood what his behaviour would do to markets, well, all he'd have to do is sell his stock holdings just before making a statement about starting a trade war or imposing a tariff, and then rebuy or start buying, not just rebuy, because now the money he's just got from that sale before the speech, a couple of days after the speech, that'll buy substantially more stock than he sold. And when he then U-turns, well, that puts markets back up. So now this larger amount of stock that he's bought is suddenly worth a great deal more money than he had to start with. So if Trump's aim was to enrich himself, then by this behaviour, which we can see, right, this behaviour of crashing markets and then U-turning and letting them rise up again, this behaviour if he was going in for insider trading, this could enrich him hugely, multiplying each time he did it. And if that was his goal, then his appointments to these important institutions, the ones responsible for investigating insider trading, well, that would make sense as well. Perfect sense. Now, I can't prove that this is actually what Trump's doing, because I have no access to his financial records. I don't know what share dealings he's had. And really nobody else can, because Trump has put gatekeepers up controlling investigations, any potential investigations into him. So I guess you'll have to make your own mind up about whether you think this is actually happening or not. All I can say is that this would make perfect sense of his behaviour, and I can't think of anything else that really would. So let's go to the second thing I cited, right? The speech by Hesketh. Right? We've had it, lots of commentators have pointed out, this was an unprecedented thing. You don't normally gather all the general officers from the three branches of the military together in one place at one time. You don't do it for loads of reasons. One is a security risk that a well-placed bomb, missile or something landing on the meeting could wipe out most of the leadership of your military in one go. Another is because if something does happen and all the general officers are off at the Pentagon or wherever the meeting was held, I don't actually know where it was held, right? They're not out in the field. The ability of the military to react to any events that occur is dramatically reduced until those officers are back in the field. It's also unprecedented in that, what was the purpose of the meeting? What did they actually do there? Apparently, Hesketh just, paraded up and down in front of the generals, trying to tell them that they were fat and lazy, and that he was a real fucking go-getter leader, and but there wasn't much else there, was there? I mean, there was no great statement of policy, no plan revealed, nothing, except for one thing. So what Hesketh did say, and he said very, very clearly to them, whilst being in the midst of insulting them, was he said, if you're not going to give us your loyalty, if you're not going to embrace our agenda and do what we want, go. We don't want you. Get out, resign, go now. He said that very, very clearly. Now, I don't think Trump just wants to make himself rich. I think that Trump wants to be the ruler of the world, basically, or at least the ruler of the largest economic power in the world. I think that when he talks about taking Canada, Greenland, I don't think he's joking. I think he has that vision. Right? He would like America to expand enormously with him at the helm. Using his position to enrich himself, or increasingly enrich himself, and increase his personal power, his standing, everything for Trump, right? To increase Trump's holdings, his might, his economic power, his scam. I mean, actually, this isn't what all authoritarian leaders want to do. Some of them, I think, really do kind of believe their own ideologies. For them, it's not a game of wealth exactly. It's about imposing their vision on the world. In that sense, I think, in a way, Trump is no different. He wants to impose his vision on the world. It's just that Trump's vision is basically a vision of Donald Trump devouring everything. And one of the first things that any authoritarian regime has to do is to get rid of everybody involved in the military, in law enforcement, if possible in government, and in the courts, who is not loyal to them. And it generally starts with the military. They do it in different ways. Sometimes they take out the people that they know would oppose them and shoot them. So Hitler, dealing with the brown shirts. Oh yes, it's not always, it's not always the other side. Sometimes it's possible competing agencies on their own side that get the bullet. It's Stalin purging the generals. You name them. I mean, every authoritarian regime. It's going on in North Korea. It happened quite recently in North Korea. It's happened in Russia. Stalin did it. I'm repeating myself there, aren't I? But every authoritarian leader that you can name has done it one way or another. And that's what Pete Hesketh was doing on behalf of Trump, was delivering that message. Get out now, we don't want you. So it's been if you understand that as being the goal, then it's been a success. It's been a major success. So many of the people who might have opposed Trump have resigned as a matter of principle, and this has happened. It's only just really started to happen in the military. It's been happening in politics. It's happened in the Republican Party. People with principles have resigned, or in some cases they've stood up to Trump and been driven out of the party by the constituents loyal to Trump. So his followers are right. He has an agenda. He has a plan. He's pursuing a plan. And a lot of them hope to get rich, or to improve their position by hanging on his coattails. But if you look at Donald Trump's behaviour, if you look at his behaviour over the years, he doesn't like other people getting rich off him. He might put up with it for a while, as long as he's dipping his beak, but he doesn't like it. Donald Trump really is about one man and one man only, and that's himself. His behaviour makes perfect sense if you understand that as being his goal. And it's not so much that he's a genius. It's just that an awful lot of people are too thick to understand what he's doing or recognise how important stopping him really is. And in the next video, I'm going to be saying something about that.